Take a listen to a clip from an upcoming documentary that she is featured in. This is an Army Guard offering advice to new recruits on how to handle the prisoners.
If you treat them like a human being, not like a caged animal, not like a person who's a terrorist, they know what they did was wrong or what they did was for a cause. But still, they're still a human being.
You get to go home, you get to call your families, you get to check your email, you get to watch TV and all that. They've been locked inside these cells for 7 years. And let me tell you, they know the rules better than you do.
All right, that's from the upcoming National Geographic Explorer documentary, Inside Guantanamo. And joining me now is someone featured in that film. Jane Smith is a former Army sergeant whose job was to guard detainees at Guantanamo Bay's detention center. Jane Smith, thank you for coming in, and welcome to WNYC.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Is that your real name? I know
no,
everybody's
it's
wondering.
not. No, it's not. I'm using a fake name because I was threatened to be killed. They did say they were going to track me down and kill me.
Who?
The detainees.
How long were you there?
From January 05 to January 06, and then again from July 07 to December 08.
Can you talk about the nature of your work? In the film, it said that guards had to perform suicide checks every 3 minutes around the clock. So were you basically walking from cell to cell looking at the prisoners?
Exactly. That's pretty much all we did, was going back and forth in a circle, making sure that they weren't doing anything to harm themselves.
The National Geographic promotional material said you put in 12 miles a day pacing the cell block. Think that's right?
I think it's more. I really do, because technically it was supposed to be doing 30-minute checks, and we were actually doing more like 30-second-a-minute checks.
Why did you agree to be in a documentary about this?
I think I wanted to show the American public my perspective and what I was going through. And, you know, they had been given all access, which was something that had never been happened before. And it was very important that the American public see what it was like for an everyday guard who wasn't an interrogator, who wasn't a policymaker.
What aspect of it?
Just being the regular guard, you know, on there working the block, dealing with the detainees, having to deal with all their issues. And, you know, I think they had never talked to a person who was a guard at the current time. You know, they talking to former guards, but they had never been any interviews with an actual guard.
You're out of the Army now. You're a civilian now. Are you completely free to speak your mind?
Not completely. I mean, there is some stuff, of course, that is still classified. But I think I'm pretty much allowed to say how I feel and what I think. It's just I can't get into that, the secret classification stuff.
Did you see torture or any evidence that it went on?
While I was there, no, I did not. You know, I think we treated them in a very human, dignified manner.
You said you wanted the American people to see what an ordinary guard goes through, not the interrogators. Do you resent the interrogators for doing what has given all of Gitmo a bad name?
No, I don't. I think that, you know, they were given a job, and most of the interrogators I knew were just, you know, regular human beings doing a job. And I don't think that they ever tortured anybody because, you know, they have to build a rapport, and torturing them would certainly lose that rapport. So I don't believe any of the interrogators tortured anybody while I was there.
You weren't told the names of detainees or why they were being held, right? How did you communicate with them? What did you call them by?
Their cell numbers. You know, we had certain tiers, certain blocks, either that or they had individual numbers assigned to them, so we'd identify them by that number.
Listeners, a rare opportunity to speak with a guard at the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-9692, or post a question to WNYC.org. Click on Brian Lair Show. What was your level of understanding of their guilt or innocence?
I didn't really judge them on what they might have been in there for. I judged them more for their behaviors that I observed and what I went through dealing with them.
Have you been a guard elsewhere?
Yes, I did corrections in the Army. That was my job. So I was a guard stationed at Fort Knox, Kentucky, working in one of the confinement facilities there. How
did the behavior of these detainees differ from other people you had guarded in more conventional circumstances?
I think they were more rude. You know, of course, in the States you do have some inmates that are very, very rude. But, you know, the threatening to kill you, the threatening to rape you, whereas in the States, they might actually make those come true.
Rude,
in Cuba, they were just, you know, talk. They threw feces on us. They spit on us. They assaulted us. And so I think the major difference, of course, is that cultural difference where, you know, we didn't really have to deal with it before.
And some of the detainees, because of their religious beliefs, I've gathered, were very uncomfortable with a female Army sergeant. What was that like?
It was very difficult. You know, I would be trying to help them, and they wouldn't deal with me. They wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't look at me. And, you know, I'd be, dude, I'm trying to help you. You know, help me help you. And it was very difficult because they wouldn't allow me to.
Did you understand going in what those differences were?
I understood it in theory. It was different in practice, however.
Along the lines that you were just describing?
Right, and it was, like I said, you know, the detainees are very... There's one part in the film where you see them calling me names and calling me a stupid Army female and long, nicer lines. I can't really say what they're saying on the film, but...
Were you familiar with concepts like habeas corpus?
I was familiar. I wasn't, you know, it wasn't my main concern.
When you were trained, were the legal parameters governing what your behavior should be, or under what legal claims these detainees were being indefinitely held? Was that described to you?
I think it was more described what we could and could not do legally as regards to the law of war, not so much as to what the detainees themselves wanted for legal freedom.
Do you feel ashamed at all of the U.S. for maintaining Guantanamo without the legal protections that prisoners usually have, either as prisoners of war or as prisoners on the U.S. mainland?
No, I don't feel any shame at all, because I think President Bush had to make a decision at that particular moment in time, and he had a learning curve, and, you know, it was either he made a decision or he didn't make a decision, and that was just the decision he picked.
One of the very first things President Obama did in office was declare that he would close Guantanamo Bay. How did that make you feel?
You know, he gets paid to make the hard decisions, so I'll let him make it. You know, that's above my pay grade. But does it scare me that I might be walking down the street one day and see a former detainee? Well, of course it does. You know, they threaten to kill me. And I would certainly hope that President Obama takes that into consideration while he's making his decisions.
As a matter of policy, though? I mean, that's a particular personal concern that you would have as a guard, and that's
right.
Completely understandable. But as a matter of policy, or don't you think about it one way or the other on that level?
No, I think it should be a matter of policy. You know, you always want to make sure that you have security and that you should take into effect, you know, the people, the area that they're going to be in and how it might affect the civilian population.
Do you think there's an appropriate place in the continental United States for these prisoners?
I don't really think so, honestly. I mean, and part of the reason why I think that we took them to Cuba in the first place was because it was defendable in a strategic military position, you know. It's very, very hard to be able to attack us there as opposed to Iraq and Afghanistan, where the jails come under fire every day. So I think if there was a jail in the U.S. where they put them at, it increases the chance of a terrorist attack against that area and putting the civilian population at risk.